Hey guys, alright, so I'm doing this video a little bit differently. It's 3 in the morning, and I don't want anybody getting a notification that I'm doing a live broadcast. And I wasn't, because of the time, I wasn't really going to do this tonight, give an update on what happened in court today. And as I drove back to Cedar City from Las Vegas, I discovered that, the broadcasts that Brian Hyde did and that John Lamb did tonight, they had problems. I mean, Brian's feed got cut off somehow the last little bit of his broadcast, and John's having voice problems. So I decided I better do an update. It's going to be a short one. It's not going to be my customary over-the-top lengthy explanation, but I do think it was important, some of the stuff that happened today. And some of you guys I know are really interested in what's going on. And so and you can't be there. So there's a huge list of witnesses that cannot be there. They're disallowed by the court from being in the courtroom during the jury trial. So I'm gonna lay it out for you the way I see it. I'm gonna try and do it quickly. So this morning we met at 10 a.m., which was way later than expected, and there was a motion hearing. Apparently yesterday there was some discussion of a phone call. There was discussion of an encounter between Clancy Cox, who is a son-in-law of Clive and Bundy, and he had encountered with some BLM agents out there on the ranch, actually I guess out on public land managed or administered by the BLM, they kept saying, the prosecution, and apparently Clancy had told the attorneys that he thought that he had been bribed or otherwise propositioned to turn on his father-in-law, kind of turn state's evidence, I guess, and he thought they basically offered him a bribe. And so yesterday they were talking about a phone conversation, or I'm sorry, an in-person conversation, and Mr. Whipple, Cliven's attorney, asked if the prosecution's witness that was up today had bribed Clancy, and he denied. And so then they discovered that there was a video recording, there was a body cam recording of this encounter, and the word bribe apparently set the prosecution into full defense mode, and they said, we got to find this video, and if it doesn't have any kind of a bribe, we need to use this to show that the defense is trying to create an inflammatory situation. And so they came up with the video, they produced the video in record time. It's funny, they can't come up with any kind of videos or any kind of recordings given weeks of prep, but this video that clearly proved the case, or the side that they wanted to show, they were able to produce it quickly. They provided the defense. And the defense came in that morning and they said, all right, look, so this particular encounter wasn't the bribe. Clancy is saying that perhaps that it happened later, either on a text message or a phone message, but there was definitely a moment when the BLM officials had asked him, what would it take for you to be our informant? And he denied. He said, I'm not interested in doing that. And, the judge took some time to talk about that that's not a bribe, that the government pays people to be informants all the time, and that that's totally appropriate, but the bribe is something inappropriate. And I'm curious where she would draw the line. She mentioned that, a bribe would be to do something maybe fraudulent or illegal, and that wasn't something that had happened. And so I don't know. I'd be interested in more detail on that clarification, but we didn't get it. So this was all not in the presence of the jury. They had this argument. The prosecution wanted to show the full 40-minute video. The defense said it wasn't necessary, that they would stipulate that the video didn't show any indication of bribery at all. And what they were concerned was that there might be some discriminating evidence, something that would maybe prejudice the defense, because Clancy at some point started opining or giving his opinion about whether or not Cliven should be grazing cattle in certain parts of public land. It seemed really insincere to me as I watched it. I thought maybe he was just trying to appease these BLM officers who had stopped him, who were in plain clothes, obviously with tactical vests on underneath their clothes. And I think he was just trying to lighten the situation and make small talk. And the video went on for 40 minutes. It was horrible recording. There was interference on the video call, probably from, it sounded to me, my technical diagnosis would be that there was a cell phone on 1G or 2G cell phone coverage that was in the near proximity, and there's magnetic interference that happens when those cellular signals happen around unshielded devices like the body camera. So the video sucked, and the jurors were bored by it. I nearly fell asleep, which is what I'm feeling doing now. It's been a long day. It was, I don't think it was all that helpful, but they did show the whole video. The judge ruled that would be okay. The defense fought it, and I asked Ryan Bundy if how he thought, what he thought about what had happened that morning. He said, I don't like it, but it probably doesn't really matter. And anyway, so they showed the full video. The jury didn't seem that engaged, and then Whipple got up and he interviewed the witness as well, who's a BLM agent, and that was interesting, but not terribly useful, I didn't think. Although it laid the groundwork, which allowed a really meaningful conversation between Ryan Bundy and the witness. Now, this witness has been trained significantly. He's basically a professional witness for the government, and he's been significantly trained that when he doesn't want to answer a question, when he might perjure himself, to pretend like he didn't understand the question and let the prosecution object. And so when Ryan Bundy got up, I noticed something interesting. When Ryan Bundy got up to address the witness, the jury all kind of, situated themselves, made themselves comfortable in their chairs. I wouldn't say they were on the edge of their seat, but it was obvious that they were more engaged with the idea of hearing Ryan Bundy cross the witness than anybody else. And I can understand why. I mean, realistically, he speaks in very plain, clear ways, and he doesn't play any of the games. So as he tried to cross this witness, the prosecution continued to object. And I had thought that there was no objections, but the prosecution objected probably no less than 20 times today. And the majority of which were sustained by the judge very casually. She sat back in her chair and would just say, sustained, sustained, and it was interesting to me that they did that. But the difficult thing for me was that it was kind of like watching a football game where the refs are playing the game. You have an offense that's really trying to advance the ball, and you maybe have a defense that's maybe not stopping them, but the more effective way to stop them is to push them back with penalties. And so you draw, the guys on the line, they bump up against the other guys, and they put their arms out wide so it looks like they're being held, and they fall over funny anytime there's a hit, and they slap their helmet to make it sound like helmet on helmet, and they get all these technical ways to stop the play. And it seemed like the prosecution, that was their plan. Their plan was to use this technical game to stop things from moving forward. Now, maybe that's a good strategy. I'm not an attorney. I don't know. But I was unimpressed. It was annoying to me that they would try and stop. It appeared very sincere that Ryan was trying to get to the truth. He was trying to ask a question, and he kept rephrasing it different ways, and the prosecution would object, and the witness would pretend like he didn't understand. And Ryan just kept trying to rephrase the question, come up with a way to really make that, to ask the question appropriately and to get the truth out there. He was obviously seeking the truth. The prosecution was using every technicality they could come up with to keep from the witness having to answer the question. And occasionally Ryan would get the right combination of words, and they couldn't stop him, and the judge would allow it, and the witness would answer yes or no, or more often, I don't recall. And it wasn't very convincing. I don't know that it was very effective for the prosecution. And there were some very interesting things that came out. Like, for example, they played yesterday a phone call Ryan Bundy had called in, and they decided to record it. And he expounded how the world was watching, that there was people all over the world interested in this case because people are interested in freedom, their own, but everybody else by extension. And that they had supporters that would come from all around to support them. And they would stand up against the government if necessary. And they keep asking whatever it takes. And he basically described whatever it's going to take, because I have people. We've been traveling the West, rallying people to come stand with us. And this phone call, he laid out, the Constitution and his beliefs in the Constitution, and it played again for the jury. And they seem to be very interested in this ideological debate, this debate of ideas. And it was really neat, again, to hear this phone call today. I wasn't here yesterday, so I didn't get to hear it. But they showed 4 minutes of a 40-minute, I guess, phone call. And it was solid gold. And then apparently Ryan had called the next morning into these same BLM guys, and among other things, he asked if he had been recorded the day before, and the officer, Special Agent Johnson, had specifically said, no, we did not record the call yesterday, which is obviously a lie, because we heard the call, it was recorded, and his partner, the BLM agent that was on the witness stand today, whose name I don't remember, it's a different name, but he admitted that his partner had lied to Ryan Bundy. And Ryan Bundy said, well, is it common practice in the BLM to lie to the citizens? And he says, well, what do you mean? And he says, well, is it protocol? And he's like, well, I don't really want to talk to protocol. I don't really know that that's relevant, or I don't know how to answer that. And Ryan just kept saying, is this a common thing? Do you lie to citizens? And finally he was able to get that question to go through, and he said, no. And he says, well, does your partner regularly lie to citizens? And he's like, no, but he obviously did in this case. So, the question is whether that questions the integrity, the credibility of Special Agent Johnson, if in fact somebody does call him to the witness stand. But it appears that he is the one, from what Clancy has said, if the witness today is being truthful, he had no further communication after the following day with Clancy, but that his partner may possibly have via text message and phone call with Clancy. And so, there's very much interest from the defense to call him to the witness stand, but it's clear that he lies because we caught him in a lie already. And when I say we, geez, I'm not even, the defense, sorry, I love these guys. I'm interested in their success. I'm interested in their freedom. The defense caught him in a lie. And that's going to be meaningful, I think, in the future. But when they call the witness, he's already kind of lost credibility because he's been caught in a lie. So then they asked for witness questions, which was kind of cool because Ryan was super limited in what he could ask because the prosecution put up such a crazy defense. And the witnesses, a lot of the questions asked Ryan's question in their own wording. We want to know the answer to these questions that Ryan has asked. Specifically, Ryan asked the witness today, did you ever claim you were a Bundy supporter? And he said, no, unequivocally no. And then he says, well, I have a document here where an FBI agent said that you told him that you said you were a Bundy supporter. And he's like, well, I don't know what you're talking about, and that's hearsay because it's something somebody else wrote about what I said. An FBI agent interviews the witness, he writes it down, and the witness gets to say, well, that's what somebody else wrote. And then the guy that writes it down gets to say, well, that was what somebody else said, and they both claim hearsay. And so you have this record that can't be used in court. It's brilliant and evil. But that's what they're doing. It's clear. And I think it's clear to the jury, because the jury asked, do we ever get to see this form? Do we get to see this document that the FBI agent wrote in his interview of this witness? And the judge says, no, it's inadmissible because it's hearsay. But there was a juror that was very interested in seeing that report because it was completely withheld from them in the questioning. But it seems extremely relevant because it could impeach the credibility of the witness today. Because the FBI agent said that this witness had claimed that he was trying to pretend to be a Bundy supporter in order to gather intel. And I think there maybe could have been some ways that Ryan could ask that question. Looking back, I can come up with a handful of ways to try. But he was getting shut down all over the place and just not very effective because of this, this mess that the prosecution was building up to try and impede the truth from coming out. So it was interesting, and I expect this to be super relevant in the future, and I expect it to go on. So, at which point, basically, the jury had lots of other questions, like why is it that the policemen or these BLM officers can record without getting consent of Mr. Bundy or Mr. Cox? And he just said, well, first, or one party consent is all that's required. And they're like, what is one party consent? And the judge is like, I'll give you legal instructions when the time comes. And they wanted to know, man, they had their questions basically were Ryan Bundy's questions that the witness refused to answer. And the prosecution didn't object because that would make him look like a jerk to object to jury questions. And so the witness answered. And if you watch John Lamb's video, you'll see some of those questions. He wrote them down in a little bit more detail. What I got out of today specifically was that the government was caught lying to Ryan Bundy on the phone. They did record one conversation, for some odd reason decided not to record another. They tried to get Clancy Cox to rat or otherwise spy on his father-in-law. They tried to get to Cliven Bundy through his son-in-law, Clancy. Regardless of their intentions or what happened in actuality, it appears that they were playing a game to either entrap or otherwise get a hand up. Long before anything happened, they were trying to strategically position themselves to bring a trial against the Bundys. And that's what Ryan Bundy claimed from the beginning. I think there's a charge. One of the charges specifically says that he falsified information to bring people out. And it's clear that the information was not falsified. So, at that point, the jury was dismissed, and Ryan Bundy said, I'd like to be heard again on my pretrial release. Is there possible that we can have a granting for a change in my pretrial release, and I can have curfew instead of house arrest? And the judge said yes. I guess Ryan had requested 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. to be able to be off premises, and the judge says you can have 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., basically meaning that Ryan, as long as he's back at his relative's house in Vegas between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m., the other 12 hours of the day he can be wherever he wants to be. And on the weekend, that may be his home with his family in Bunkerville. And that's cool. So we celebrated. I called the chairman of the board of my company and asked for permission to incur an expense. And I took Ryan Bundy and John Lamb and Brian Hyde and Lisa Bundy and a couple of other people with who I met just today, so I don't remember the names off the top of my head and I'm sleepy. We took them out to a nice steak dinner. And it ended up being a little nicer than I anticipated. But man, it was golden. The stuff we talked about. I'm telling you guys, look, I'm going to be real with you for just a minute. You got to be there. If you want to be involved, if you want to help, you got to be there. Now, there's ways to help to not be there. I mean, realistically, there's tons of ways to help. You can, change the narrative. Tell your neighbors the truth of what's going on here. Dig up research. And I'm trying to release some of this research. I'm trying to provide the evidence. I'm trying to show exactly what happened. Everybody else is too. You got to look into that. And you got to be able to articulate that to people because everybody's interested. And they all think, well, I'm not sure that they actually think they know the details, but they pretend they know the details because they've heard some data about it. But you can help that way. But realistically, if you want to be a big help, if you want to be involved, if you want to be connected to these guys, you want to show them respect, you got to be there. You got to show up in the courtroom. You got to stay a little bit late and see if you have a chance to take them to lunch or take them to dinner. See if you have an opportunity to sit and talk and get to know these guys and pray with them. Attendance is 90% of success. Intelligence is 10%. It's worth something. But attendance is what it's all about. You actually have to be there. It doesn't matter how smart you are. If you don't show up, you don't win. And, I was fortunate enough to be there today. I had an opportunity. I took it. And I was able to get some precious time with Ryan Bundy, and I value it very highly. So you got to be there. Now, as for being real, there's something else you can do. And we all talk a big talk. And we all say we support them. But we go to our job every day and we say, if we didn't have our job, we could be there more often. And I'm partially guilty of this too, because I'm only down there like once a week. But the rest of the time, I'm earning money. And that money provides a reasonably comfortable life for my family. And because I have been given much, I too must give. And if you really believe that this is a fight worth having, if you believe that this is a fight worthy of the United States of America, if you believe that freedom really matters and this fight is relevant to freedom, put your money where your mouth is. Don't send it to me. If you want to buy power tools on plumberstock.com or toilets, if you want that kind of stuff, I'm happy to sell it to you. That will help me, sure, but that's not where you need to send your money. If you're going to put your money where your mouth is, if you're going to show that you really support this cause, you need to go to bundydefense.com and you need to give them some money. I have. Lots of people have. Not enough. It's expensive to do this. Did you know, here's an interesting tidbit. Did you know that the grazing rights that the government is saying this is all about, the grazing rights that they claim Cliven Bundy owed was around $8,000. Now, they've tacked on fees and court expenses and all kinds of crap for 20 years. That's where this $1 million figure gets thrown out there. But realistically, even with the fees, when this all started going down in 2014, it was less than $300,000, even with all of the nonsensical fees that would have been argued forever. $300,000. Do you have any idea what the budget is for this trial? Between witnesses and prosecutors and defense attorneys and marshals and court and judge? I don't know specifically. I can deduce from what I see, but I'm hearing that it's going to cost the government over $100 million to prosecute these guys. $100 million. Do you know what $100 million can buy you in the world today? Do you have any idea who's paying that money? You're paying that money. I recognize it. The problem is that money is being extorted from you and used against you. You have an opportunity. You have a chance to counterbalance that. There are some really good attorneys that believe in this idea. They believe in the principle behind this case. And they are fighting it on a shoestring budget because they believe in it. But that shoestring budget's running out, guys. And they need your help. They need my help. I realized I took them to a fancy dinner tonight, and that didn't go straight to the attorneys. I thought Ryan Bundy had earned a steak dinner. It's been a long time. But I give the Bundy defense too, and I hope you will. Because really, if this is a fight that is valuable, if you really think that freedom is worth defending, and we actually have a reason to care, your life is comfortable and their lives suck. Help them out. Fight for freedom. Fight with us. Because the battle is here. If you're waiting for somebody to tell you that the battle is ready and they need your help, let me be that person. The battle is here. In fact, it's almost over. You have a chance to help, to participate. You can do so anonymously if you want. You can do so publicly. I obviously am. But you can do so anonymously. You can get involved and you really can help. Even $10 helps if it comes from a bunch of people. $100 is much more helpful, and it'll get some attention to some of these guys. And if that's what you want, you can have that attention and you can use it. Help them out. Put your money where your mouth is, because the tide is turning, but it could be lost just as quickly without our help. So I recognize it's now like 3:30 in the morning. I don't expect any of you guys to watch this for a few hours. But please realize that I look tired because I am tired. And it's in the middle of the night, and I just drove 3 hours. After 6 hours talking to Ryan Bundy, some of the most precious time I've ever had in my life. I recommend you try and find a way to get that time for yourself. Have a great day. Keep up the fight and join us to help make this effective. Thank you. Good night.